Well, hello, furniture people. This is a cool piece. Hang in with me and you'll get a good payoff in the end here. So this is a weird little thing. It's called a Drysink, and I'll get more into that in a minute. This is the only bit of a maker's mark left. This is maybe a little patent mark. No idea where this was made. Not even sure when it was made exactly. Probably late 1800s, early 1900s. Eddie wasn't too sure about this one. What this is, a dry sink, is prior to houses having plumbing, you would wash your face, and we've all seen this in like old westerns and stuff like that. You'd wash your face in the morning with a pitcher of water and a bowl, and you might have a chamber pot underneath where you, in the middle of the night, if you don't want to go outside, you did your business in the chamber pot, put it underneath. It's an old dry sink. They're not very common. At this point, if you Google them, you can find pictures of this exact style piece. I think this one was probably pretty common and readily available. And you can see it was stained here. And you also saw a few seconds ago I did my lead-based paint test, and I'm happy that I did because this thing was slathered in lead-based varnish, I guess, not paint. Being that I don't want to coat the inside of my workroom with lead-based paint particles, I started stripping, testing out a couple of different strippers here, seeing what worked best. And the quality of the finish on this, while it's beat up on the one hand, modern chemical strippers, I went through several containers of different strippers to get this eventually down to bare wood where I could actually successfully sand it. And I ended up doing 3 or 4 lead-based paint tests on it. Even now thinking, that middle spot there, it's a little bit lighter, that looks good. Nope, that would still test positive for lead-based paint. Being that I have an interesting idea for this going into the whole project too, you just had this little wooden knob here, and on the drawer there was a similar knob, that little side drawer, and I just got rid of those and I replaced the hardware and the hinges to come up with the result that I wanted. A little crack in the wood there, and again, this thing is probably 125, maybe even a little bit older than that, and it's had its dinks and dents there, you can see in the front. But a fun piece and a commercially mass-produced piece of furniture is what it is. So I started my process, again, cleaning it up, stripping it down, and eventually got to where I needed to be. All right, the stripping is done, and once I had it down to a point where it no longer tested positive for lead, I actually took it out in my yard and I sanded it outside out there. There may have been little residual bits here and there that were on it. And again, I didn't want that in my house, so that's how I avoided it. And I started out, this is ultimately a 3-step process that I used here. I really wanted the wood grain to pop, and so I start out with a dark stain, obviously here on the sides, and then in a moment here on the front. And after staining and drying, I will take a light grit sandpaper to the piece and sand it down lightly, and the raised grain in any of the wood is really what I'm sanding. I'm not deep sanding, and I'm not trying to make the wood flat or anything like that in this process. I'm getting the grain to pop more, because even right now, when you you look at this and it looks kind of dull and flat. It's not interesting. But here, watch the magic happen. And you can see the grain that's a little bit raised up, a little bit higher, it starts to pop out. And then I took a lighter stain, a honey stain, give it a little bit of color, and ran that over it, and really came up with a nice finish on the tail end. The inside of this thing, as we get to it here in a second, was also coated with a ton of lead-based varnish stuff. So I primed it with a sealer primer, the white stuff there. Kills, worked great. It's going to seal in that lead-based paint, lead-based varnish, keep it from hurting anybody. And then ultimately what I was going for here was sort of an Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant feel. And that's why I chose this gold chalk paint. Went on nicely. Had to do 4 or 5 coats to get it to where I wanted it to be. Even there you can see, some of the edging and stuff like that, but eventually nailed it to what I wanted. And then, as always, polyurethane, lots of coats, 4 or 5 coats, 6 coats on the top, 2 or 3 coats on the sides and the fronts, getting everything coated up, sealed in. Not at this point that I'm worried about any lead on the exterior anymore, but eventually this is going to dry, kind of self-levels as you're working on it, and you just get this great, wonderful finished look. And even there, looking at the grain, through a little bit of the haze of the poly, it's just really pretty wood. Just nice. Boom, here we are. So this is a Drysink. This is now a liquor cabinet. It went from a dumpster piece to a conversation piece in the matter of a few days, and I had a lot of fun with it. Didn't know what it was when I first saw it. A little bit of research showed me exactly what it was, and now I show pictures of this, or I have guests at the house or something like this. They're all very interested to learn something about history, about a Drysink, and how I retasked it. So Eddie went from covering up his face at the beginning of this video to, he's super proud about this one. He's my buddy. So I want to thank you for hanging in there with me. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I love doing this. I love sharing this stuff. It's just so much fun between the refinishing and the filming and being on YouTube and exchanging comments and everything. Stay safe and be healthy, everybody.